Do you remember in the very first episode of The Witcher where Geralt bursts from the depths of a dark, dingy swamp, savagely slaying a giant spider-like monster? Well, that monster we soon found out was a Kikimora. And I had to ask myself, what actually is that? When educating myself about the Kikimora, I discovered that it's actually a real legend of Polish folklore. Was the Kikimora accurately adapted in The Witcher? Short answer, no, not at all. Nonetheless, the Kikimora is quite the interesting tale. Hello, traveler. My name is Anissa, the mythical maven, and if you like immersive deep dives, captivating commentary, and more, then you've come to the right place. The Kikimora in the Witcher series is a giant, grotesque, spider-like creature that lives in eerie, dark wetlands, and in my opinion, serves three main purposes to being the very first monster and scene we see in the Witcher series. 1, the scene showcases Geralt's advanced monster hunting abilities. He literally slays. 2, it gives the viewer a chance to see the grandiose of the creatures Geralt will come across throughout his adventures. And 3, it acts as a catalyst for the entire series. Geralt kills the Kikimora and takes it to Blaviken, looking for the alderman. He has quite the warm welcome, being immediately provoked by the bar owner and a group of men. A woman who we come to find out is named Renfri defends Geralt, silencing her gang. But with the bar owner stating witchers cannot be trusted. Geralt and Renfri strike conversation, but he's still on a mission. So he leaves and comes across a girl named Marilka. Geralt finds out that her father, the alderman, isn't looking for a Kikimora, but directs him to the wizard master Irion. Struggleboard. I just wanted to say a side note about Marilka because I found her fairly interesting despite being in the show for like only a few minutes. She's very intrigued by Geralt and sees him as an object of grand adventure and mystery. She wants to explore outside of her boring little town of Blaviken. And as someone who left their hometown for similar reasons, I found her very relatable. I wouldn't kill my dog for money, but I digress. Geralt reaches the wizard's tower with an illusion to look like what appears to be the Garden of Eden, and he soon finds out that Stregobor wants him to assassinate Renfri. Renfri is one of 60 girls born under the Black Sun. The curse of the Black Sun was revealed when a mage named Altabod prophesied that these girls would grow up to become vicious monsters, bring back the reign of the goddess Lilith, and thus destroying all of human civilization. Geralt finds this idea absurd, but Stregobor tries to assure Geralt that killing Renfri is the lesser evil. Stregobor states that Renfri, even as a child, was violent and monstrous, doing acts such as torturing a canary, strangling 2 puppies, and gouging out her maid's eye with a comb. He then states that he sent someone to follow Renfri in the woods, where this man's ear was punctured with her antique brooch, and because of this, Renfri now seeks revenge against Stregobor and has followed him to Blaviken. He then states that Geralt showing up around the same time is destiny, but Geralt still refuses. Geralt then goes to the woods where he's talking to Roach, and Renfri walks up to Geralt to tell him that the reason she killed Stregobor's man was because he SA'd her. She explains that she had to do what she needed to survive, and I'm sure no one can blame her for that. The thing about Renfri and Geralt is that they're both deemed as monsters by society, and were born into these circumstances out of their control and are just trying to live life the best way that they can. So Geralt gives Renfri an ultimatum. She can leave Blaviken and reclaim her name and reputation, or if she kills Stregobor, she will be proving that she is the monster that she is described to be. So she finds him again, stating that she will leave Blaviken. He then falls asleep and has a dream where Renfri introduces the girl in the woods, stating that this girl is his destiny. When he wakes up, he goes to the market and encounters Renfri's gang. He then brutally kills every last one of them in front of everyone, to which he gains the name the Butcher of Blaviken. Renfri comes forth with a blade to Marilka's throat, saying she'll kill everyone until Stregobor comes out. They end up sword fighting where Geralt gains the upper hand, cutting Renfri's throat. Her last words are a reminder to Geralt that the girl in the woods is his destiny, who we soon find out is Ciri. Without the Kikimora in the beginning of the series, Geralt would have never went to Blaviken and found Renfri to tell him about his destiny. The Kikimora or Kikimora in the games are insectoids and are much smaller than the Kikimora in the series. They have horned heads and torsos with thorny and spiked legs. They live in colonies that are curated by the queen, protected by the warriors, and held together by the workers. They live in swamps, residing in dark and damp caves. You know you're near a Kikimora colony when it's devoid of all life and is littered with bones, usually picked clean by the warriors. They have deadly leaping strikes and spit acid that causes blindness and crippling pain. Workers are the smallest. They are resourceful and industrious, building structures and providing food. They're only aggressive when provoked, are less armored, and susceptible to knockdown attempts. Warriors protect the queen. They're dutiful and defensive, have thick armor, they're more aggressive, they're immune to most effects, and resistant to knockdown attempts. And they will command workers to dig holes for them so that they can do sneak attacks. Their acid leaves you to suffer overdose effects such as half health and health degeneration, but can be neutralized by acquiring the alchemy skill heightened tolerance, but it has to be fully upgraded. The queen finds the cave and her purpose is to just chill and pump out babies. She has super thick armor, is resistant to pretty much everything. She's bulky and has rib-like flesh protruding from her abdomen. She also has no eyes, and her only weakness is that she's slow, but can kill you in one hit. So you should run. So the only similarities that I found between the Kikimora and the game versus the series are that they're both insectoids and live in swamps. Otherwise, in the series, it's bigger and more spider-like, and is also not as colorful, being pretty much just black. It also has a distinct face. In the game, they're more red, beige, and green, and also live in colonies rather than solo. It would be hard for me to believe that something as huge as the Kikimora in the series would live in a colony. That just sounds insane to me. The Kikimora in Folklore is an Eastern Slavic domestic female spirit originating from the 8th to 13th century. She is characterized as a hunched-over hag with disheveled hair, covered by a headscarf that was usually worn by Eastern Slavic women in history. She appears in tattered and unkempt clothes, covered in dirt, moss, and swamp water. She has bulging eyes, a long thin nose or beak, followed by legs that end in chicken feet. Kikimora tend to be created during tragic events, such as abortions, miscarriages, when a woman dies during childbirth, if a child dies without being baptized, if a child is buried beneath a house, which was actually common practice back then, when a child dies and was deformed during life, elderly female spirits that have roamed the earth for too long, and if a black cat jumps over a fresh grave and the being rises from that grave, it'll either become a Kikimora or a vampire. Kikimora are hyperactive, can become invisible upon command, love to spin thread, which is one of their favorite things to do, with their favorite times to do it being during forbidden times, such as Fridays at midnight and during Christmas Eve. Kikimora tend to dwell in inhabited homes, entering through keyholes. During the day, they hide in crevices, basements, behind the stove, pretty much anywhere. At night, if you hear scurrying about or rummaging through your belongings, clinking of pots and pans, and if you wake up and find your knitting and sewing gear disorganized, then you might have a Kikimora in your house. They also like to inhabit creepy buildings, such as cursed buildings or buildings near cemeteries. They can also be found near crossroads, which in a lot of different folklore and mythology, crossroads are seen as a portal between the spiritual world and the material world. They also like to dwell in burnt homes and will dwell inside homes of those that have recently committed suicide. Some Kikimora would rather live in forests and swamps, although they still would rather live in the creepier ones. Forest-dwelling Kikimora and their partner, the Leshy, try to find lonely travelers and will drag them into the forest never to be seen again. And if you find yourself in a pea field in the summer, you should probably run because the Kikimora will chase after you with a frying pan intending to eat you. They are also sometimes known to kidnap children, and it's also said that the kidnapped children are fated to become Kikimora themselves. In place of your kidnapped child, they will either leave an enchanted item or a mossy log or rock. Kikimora will also disguise themselves as lost children, animals, or enticing plants and objects. So, my fellow witches, be careful because we never know if we're bringing a Kikimora into our homes. When she is in your home, she can be persuaded to do household chores by washing your utensils in a brew of ferns. However, they will only assist the competent housekeeper. If you're an incompetent housekeeper, you'll find your items are going missing, your food will become spoiled fairly quickly, and your children will wake up throughout the night. If you're a competent houseworker, she'll help you clean dishes, tend to the animals and children, and just help keep things tidy and together. If there's harmony in the home and she's very happy, she'll even act as a guardian for your home. But if there is chaos in your home, she'll break dishes, provoke your animals, flip furniture, make loud noises, and dry up your animal's milk. We love a petty queen. If she's really upset and displeased, she will come to you as you sleep, sit on your chest, drain your life source, causing sleep paralysis. And sleep paralysis can lead to depression and, in extreme cases, thoughts of suicide. Aside from being a household spirit, she is also a fortune teller and is associated with fate. If you see her sitting around and lounging in your house, it's very likely that bad luck and tragedy will happen. If you see her crying, that's a death omen. And if you're allowed to witness or hear her spinning thread, it means someone in your family is going to die. You can hold her ransom for her fortune-telling abilities if you hear her children crying underneath the floorboards. Find the crevice and cover it with a rag. At that point, she'll do anything you ask to save her babies. Another fact about the Kikimora is that she loves to spin thread, but is actually really bad at it, and that's just one of the most relatable things I've ever heard. The woman would hide their woven creations and sewing equipment and put protective spells so that the Kikimora wouldn't disturb them. And if you wanted to get rid of a Kikimora, here are a few things you can do. You could block keyholes and crevices, leave a broom upside down near the door because that acts as a protective barrier. You can recite prayers and poems, bury silver near the entrances, wear protective amulets. They also don't like white onions or black beads. They won't come in if there are Bibles and crosses in the home, and they are allergic to pastors. If someone calls you a Kikimora, they're either calling you a dirty or unmotivated person or a very hardworking person. So I do some introspection if you're ever called a Kikimora. Children would also be called Kikimora if they were considered black sheep, which I think a lot of us would have been called Kikimora back in the day. I also wonder what the children were like hundreds of years ago that would have been the equivalent to scene or emo kids in this era. I wish there was a way to figure that out. So, as you can tell, the Kikimora in the Witcher series is a very loose adaptation of the folklore. The only similarities are that they like creepy swamps, and Kikimora are associated with fate, and in a way, the Kikimora in the Witcher helps Geralt to find his fate. I think that the Kikimora in the series is just an exaggerated version of both the folklore and the games, mixed with human imagination. Another question I ask myself is, why does the Kikimora in folklore exist in the first place? They come from very tragic events, and back then, these tragedies happened very often. There's a lot of guilt, shame, and regret that comes up after all of these traumatic experiences. When you hear strange noises at night, when you notice items being misplaced, it could be our minds trying to put an external source on something internal that we can't comprehend. Our brain is just trying to rationalize these experiences. No one would be in their right mind after these experiences, so if you didn't have a full grasp on depression and anxiety, why wouldn't you blame it on something outside of you? Also, how would you even wrap your brain around sleep paralysis without having the medical knowledge of what it actually is? I also feel like, in a less tragic way, Kikimora is a story showcasing the importance of keeping a tidy home and not letting it get too messy and unkempt. Also, as someone with ADHD, finding your items going missing and waking up to your belongings disorganized and having no recollection of how it got to that, if I was alive around the 8th to 13th century, maybe I would also blame it on a Kikimora. Either way, these folklore stories are our teachers. Whether passed down through generations or Hollywood adaptations, they offer wisdom and insight, and it depends on how you interpret them and apply them to your own life if they provide value. They allow us to not make mistakes other people have made so that we can further ourselves in society. I didn't think much of the Kikimora until the second time I watched The Witcher, but I'm glad I did. I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the various worlds of the Kikimora, and remember to keep your minds open and embrace the extraordinary.